My name is Eric Spencley, and one of the things I get asked about the most is dust collection. So today I want to go over what I would consider the 10 levels of dust collection, ranging from the simplest to the most complicated, on Spencley Design Co. At level 1, you pretty much just go about your day, doing all of your work, making a huge mess with your tools, and at the end of the day, you just say, and leave. Don't like to work in a massive mess all the time? Well, neither do I. So level 2 would be stepping up to a broom and dustpan. Now everybody should already have a broom at home, but trust me, you don't want to use your significant other's broom. Ask me how I know. Anyway, brooms are super cheap and they don't require any electricity. However, cleaning up an entire shop with only a broom is super labor intensive. And at the end of the day, let's be honest, the last thing you're going to do is sweep up an entire workshop. Now, if you're still on a tight budget but want to increase the dust collection at the source that it's being made at, try something like a dust bag. Now, you're probably most familiar with this type of dust collection on things like your sander or perhaps a miter saw. The dust from the tool shoots out the back and into the dust bag. And is this the perfect solution? No, but it's better than having it blow all over your shop, right? Now, if you want to use a tool like a planer, a pillowcase is a perfect solution for capturing dust in larger quantities. The only downside here is that these are going to leak fine dust into the air unless you buy one that's specifically rated to contain fine particles. Oh, and by the way, I'll leave a link to this and all of the other products I talk about in this video down in the description below. The other con to using this dust collection method is that you actually kind of look like Santa Claus when you're emptying it out, but come to think of it, maybe that's actually a pro. Now for dust collection level 4, it would be grabbing a shop vac. And that's what I started out with. You can grab one of these things for usually $50 to $75 and they work pretty well. You can hook a shop vac up to virtually any tool, from things like a table saw, a router, or even a sander, and collect a whole ton of dust. However, the downside to using a shop vac, especially if you use it fairly frequently, is that you're going to clog up all the filters on the inside. When the filters get clogged, no air can move through the vacuum, which means you'll experience virtually no suction. Remember that vacuum that you had in college that literally sucked nothing up off the floor? Yeah, that's a clogged filter. Oh, the other con is that these things are usually super loud. Now, if you want to jump up to level 5 of dust collection, that'd be taking your shop vac and adding a dust bag on the inside. These bags capture virtually all of the dust that comes in through the vacuum and prevents any of that dust from getting out and getting all over the filter inside of the vacuum. Now what this does is it helps maintain the suction of your vacuum for a much longer time and makes that filter inside last virtually forever. Plus, they make cleanup way easier. All you have to do is remove the bag from the shop vac, throw it in the trash, and insert a new one. Now what I've actually seen some folks do is they'll take the filter bag, they'll cut off the end, and then they'll use clips to fold it back up so that they can reuse these things. And that's using your noggin. Now, the downside to using these filter bags is that I think one of these usually runs about $7 or $8. I usually pick them up in a multi-pack though. And if you're using your shop vac a lot, you can fill this up super fast. And the other downside is that if you forget to look inside of your vacuum to see how full the bags are, I've had quite a few of them explode, and then all the dust is on the inside of your vacuum, all of your filter, and you're pretty much back to level 4. Now for level 6 of dust collection, it's going to be adding a separator to your shop vac. So the basic premise of how the separators work is that all of the sawdust enters the separator and the vast majority of it is going to fall down into the collection bucket, and only a super small percentage is actually going to reach the inside of the vacuum. And what this does is it makes things like your dust bag and your filter inside of the shop vac last virtually forever. Now you're probably wondering why I have 2 of these separators, and to be honest with you, it's because I'm an idiot. You're an idiot! And what I mean by that is I always get super distracted when I'm filming and building everything that I usually forget to check how full my collection bins are. And typically, once I remember to actually look at the collection bin, I realize it's overflowing. So by having a second one, gives me a little bit of backup and just makes my shop vac, filters, and bags last longer. Now these separators probably sound like a huge win, right? Well, while they're nice, they do have downsides. Now the one downside to these is that since you're going to be using extra hose to run from the shop vac to the collector to wherever you're picking stuff up from, you're going to lose a little bit of suction. Now, I'm far from a mathematician, but you definitely do lose a little bit. The other thing is you'll notice that these tend to increase a lot of static electricity, so a lot of times you'll touch the hose and get a little shock, and it's kind of annoying. Now level 7 would be jumping up to a full-size dust collector. Now an entry-level unit like this one from Buck Tool will run you right about $300. And the benefit to a dust collector over a shop vac is that it will pull a lot larger volume of air through it. Now this allows you to hook up to something like a joiner or a planer that puts out a massive amount of sawdust. Now while you might be able to get away with it with some shop vacs, most shop vacs are just not going to be able to pull enough volume through the hose to keep up with all those chips coming off the machine. Another benefit to a machine like this one here is that it has an automatic start and stop function, meaning that it has the ability to automatically turn on and turn off whenever your tool's turned on. Another pro is that these dust collector units are typically a lot quieter than a shop vac. Now, they still make a lot of noise and I always wear my hearing protection while I'm in the shop, but it's nice not to have that just super loud hum going on in the background like a shop vac does. Now, the other downside to using a full-size dust collector is that they're just larger and so they're inherently going to be more difficult to move around the shop. However, a lot of these entry-level units come with wheels or casters on them that allow you to easily move them around the shop. Level 8 would be adding a dust separator to your full-size dust collector. Now you wouldn't actually want to use this specific unit for this specific dust collector. You'd actually want to get one that has the same size hose. So this one has a 4-inch hose, and I'd want to get a dust separator that has a 4-inch inlet on it. But it's going to work the exact same way it does on a shop vac. Also, by using a separator in conjunction with your dust collector, you decrease the likelihood of large chunks, maybe pieces of metal, getting sucked up into the impeller of the dust collector and potentially causing any sparks. Now, I am not going to get started on the whole controversy about whether or not dust collectors start fires.
Everybody stay calm. What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure? Stay calm!
But just know that there are some cases where people have reported that happening out there. Now, level 9 would be upgrading your dust collector with some sort of ducting. And what I mean by this is instead of moving your dust collector to each individual tool around your shop, you're going to run ducts from the dust collector to each individual tool. So to help visualize this, think of how your home works. In each room of your house, you have air vents. Those air vents are connected to the air ducts. Those air ducts go back to your air system of your house and it basically shoots air all throughout your house. Now, ductwork for a dust collection system works the exact same way, but instead of shooting air out, it pulls air in. Now, to accomplish something like this, you're going to need something much more powerful than one of these entry-level dust collectors. However, since you don't have to move the dust collector and connect it to every tool every time you want to use one, you're going to save a ton of time and efficiency in the shop. All you have to do is open up the blast gate, turn the tool on, and you're good to go. Then when you're done, you close the blast gate and move on to your next tool. Now you might be asking, well, what's a blast gate?
Blast!
Well, think of it like the vents in your home. Now, if you were to go inside of your home and close every single vent except one, you're gonna feel a lot more air pressure onto that one vent. Then, if you keep your hand in front of that one vent and at the same time open up all the other vents in your house, you're gonna feel a lot less air pressure. So if we were to think of that in terms of dust collection system, which is basically the opposite of that, instead of pushing air, it's pulling air. If you have tons of different vents open, you're gonna have virtually no air pressure to suck all the dust away from the machine. And when we're talking about dust collection, we wanna have the most suction possible, so you really only wanna have one of those blast gates or vents open. Now before I move on to level 10, I wanna take a quick second to thank Bouncy Afro, Wire Guy, and a huge special thanks to Robert Duke for helping me support this channel and getting me one step closer to taking all of this full time. Now, if you'd like to support me in turning this passion of mine into my full-time career, consider checking out my Patreon page. Over there, I have tons of rewards for you and exclusive stuff that you can't find anywhere else, including stickers, t-shirts, and sweatshirts. In addition, you'll also get gift cards to my online store so you can download plans and anything else that you like every single month. So if that's something you're interested in, consider checking out my Patreon page, but I want to reiterate, there is absolutely no pressure. Now, if remembering to manually open and close all those blast gates throughout your shop seems a little daunting, that's where we step up to level 10.
Hold on to your butts.
And that is a fully automated ducted system. What this does is it automatically opens and closes all the ducts that you need without you ever having to worry about anything. Now, this is a completely foolproof method, but as you can probably guess, that convenience factor does not come cheap. Now, outside of the price, the downside to having either a manual or a fully automatic ducted system is that you have to pretty much be set with how your tools are set up in your shop. Once you run all of your ducts to all of your tools, you can't do a whole lot of reconfiguration. So if you're someone who likes to reconfigure their shop pretty often, moving those ducts around could potentially be a real pain.